Welcome to The Forum, your modern-day coffee house, where ideas can be birthed, exchanged, and wrestled with. We celebrate questions, conversation, and reason as powerful tools to enlighten hearts and transform minds, shaping a new generation of thinkers, innovators, and pioneers. We're glad you're here, so pull up a chair and let's begin.
Good morning. Hi. Right, hope you're all well. I'm okay. Hope you're all firing on all cylinders, because I'm not. I'm probably going to need a bit of bounce back. So I immediately regretted locking in the topic for this week as soon as it went out. As soon as I started to give it any more thought. So the kind of week I've had is procrastination. It's really good. It's really not good. I've got a real problem with procrastination. So like yesterday at one point, while I was working on this, I found myself with a screwdriver in my hand and a dismantled drinking bottle, trying to put it back together. And I spent about half an hour trying to do that. But I did a wash load. I hung the washing out. I folded it. I did the dishwasher 3 times. One of the times I got all the shelves out the oven and put them in. So the oven's looking good. But basically, my brain was trying to solve easier problems than the one that I'd decided that I was going to try and solve. Not that it's a solvable problem. I've got a picture of what I looked like last night. This is me. For anyone listening, that's Charlie with his crazy board from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Good show. What else can I say about that? So yeah, what I wanted to address this morning was the idea of God. And as someone who's brought up in church and then deconstructed a lot of my beliefs, ditched the dogma, what was I left with? Because I couldn't just write off all my experience as delusional, even though in some cases that would be quite easy to do. But my faith was very much expressed through things like dreams and visions and words from God. Sometimes Danny would say to me, "Oh, the prophet Kev strikes again," with a bit of a nod and a wink. But I had an incredible hit rate for predicting things, certain random things. I didn't seem to be able to control what I could predict. There was no lottery wins or anything like that. But I didn't really know what to do with it. I just felt like the way that I'd been brought up, it meant I just had to be obedient to God. You know, if I heard something, I had to act on it. And that, because that's how I was brought up. That's what was taught to me to do. And it was completely normal to be in a conversation and say things like, "God said this to me. God said that to me," which sounds bizarre, doesn't it, when you say it like that now? But when you deconstruct the framework and the context that supported that worldview, you can either write it all off as delusion. Oh well, I must have been on something, or something wrong with my brain, or I just got lucky, or whatever. Or you need to try and figure out what was going on, because and I know many others probably in the room, have probably had similar experiences where they got a sense of something more, but it couldn't really be explained. So, this morning, we're going to explore, is there a God we can all agree on? Now, I could save us some time this morning and say no. Thanks for coming. See you next week. That was easy. But I do think it's worth thinking about. So, when it comes to God, I'll just put this slide up for some visuals. So when it comes to God, our definitions differ. So God means wildly different things across cultures. It could be a personal deity, it could be a force, consciousness, nature, or just nothing at all. Perfectly valid views. When it comes to God, our personal experience shapes belief. So either your upbringing, your trauma, your education, and your environment all influence the view of God or the divine. You've got competing religions. Each system claims truth. Some say God is love. Some say God is law. Some say God is unknowable. I kind of like that one. And then you've got atheists and agnostics, which is essentially like a bit of a paradox because a universal God must be believed by those who don't believe. So I can't really make a case for that if you decided that you don't believe that there is such thing as a God. It's a paradox, a contradiction. So what do we do with that? And also language fails. Unfortunately, God is such a loaded word. It's got centuries of baggage, loads of metaphors, loads of emotion, and doctrine. So when someone says God, they might mean the bearded man in the sky, like this kind of guy here. Look, very angry, that one. I'm pointing at pictures on the screen, by the way, for the people listening. God could be the inner moral compass, which is kind of a humanist view. God could be the laws of physics. God could be consciousness itself, which is the one that we're going to explore this morning, which is kind of an Eastern flavor to it. Or God is a fictional character, which is the atheist view. And as Joel likes to remind me, there are 45,000 different denominations of the Christian faith. So there's 45,000 divisions of different interpretations of God. So shall we try and get to one that works? I think we can prove them all wrong, right, can we? So people project their own understanding onto the word. So even if two people say, I believe in God, they might be agreeing on the word God, but not the meaning. So what I want to do first is just ask, what does God mean to you? So you can take a bit of time on the table and chat through. And also I've put some post-it notes out. I'm hoping that we can put some stuff on the board in that area. So it just could be like what God is, what God isn't, anything basically that comes to mind around God. What does God mean to you? So we'll do that for about 10 minutes, and then I'll come up and do the next bit. Thanks. Hello. Was that an interesting discussion? Not interesting? Did the atheists speak up? I didn't do the show of hands. I didn't mean to present something that was meant to be so skewed towards theism, but it seems like most people in here have come from the God background and therefore have, well, not baggage, but certainly ideas surrounding it. So I'm sorry if anyone was left out in that sense. But I've got a slide, I think. For the next section, I want to spend a bit of time perhaps on maybe an unusual concept of God, although listening to the discussion on our table, it's probably not that far of a stretch, actually, for people to grasp. But this version of God has helped me reframe a lot of the things that have come up so far. So maybe once we've done this, we'll try and revisit some of these statements and see if any of them are compatible with this theory, and then close. We might not. We'll see how we go. So, I tried to make it as easy to understand as possible, but that's a bit problematic because it's kind of complicated. Kind of. And I'm quite nervous about this because what I'm presenting is something that's very much attached to who I am as a person. And so the idea of putting it out for scrutiny and having holes in it is a bit daunting, but it's important, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing it. So I'm not standing here claiming that what I'm about to say is truth. It's like to share an idea or a concept that I thought was worth sharing, which is part of what we're doing here at the forum anyway. Like, you don't have to accept it. Just consider it. So, first of all, I didn't come up with all of this myself. It's a bit of a mishmash of many things that I've read and been taught, alongside a lot of teaching that we've had here at Q over the years. There were books such as What We Talk About When We Talk About God, which was by Rob Bell. And he challenges the traditional fixed images of God that we were kind of used to growing up. But he sees God as dynamic, personal, and woven into every layer of reality. This book was a good sort of stepping stone to a more expansive view of God for me. I've got a quote. from it. You might have just seen it. I think it's that one. God is calling us forward into greater and greater peace, integration, wholeness, and love. Now, there were also many teachings from Alan Watts. His concepts come from kind of Eastern philosophy. And his idea is that we're all God in disguise trying to discover ourselves. So he calls it the great game of hide and seek. And to back it up, he often quotes Jesus saying, "Ye are gods," which is something that he got in a lot of trouble for at the time for saying, to suggest that everybody is God in some kind of sense. So essentially, you're an expression of the divine, is what he means, what Alan Watts' philosophy is about. So he says, "You are something that the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing," which is nice, and I think he probably stole that a little bit from Rumi. Would you back me up on that, Heather? Yeah. And then finally, it kind of fell into place for me, and the way my mind works, when I discovered NASA physicist Tom Campbell, who I've mentioned before, with his big toe theory, which toe stands for theory of everything, but it's just a funny title for it. Yeah, I've definitely touched on this before, and Danny referenced him the other week when he was talking about entropy. So I thought I'd try and convey the contents of this book. Which has the smallest font I've ever seen. Yeah, it took about 4 years, but now I'm ready. And by all means, it's not perfect. It's a very, very dense model of reality. It's a dry read, but ultimately the stuff in there I found helpful. So yeah, I'm going to try and convey it as concisely as possible. And this is where I really tripped up this week by trying to do this, and where my regret came from. But what it explores, or what you can derive from it, is the idea of God as consciousness. So, first of all, we have to define what is consciousness in this context. So he says it's just awareness with a choice. So you're aware, you have a choice, you're consciousness. It's your awareness that experiences life. So when you feel joy, sadness, when you dream, imagine, love, that's consciousness doing its thing. It's not your brain or your body. Your brain or your body are kind of the tools that the consciousness use to interact with the world. That's how he puts it. So here's the leap on the science side. I'm not going to delve into the science because that's where you're going to glaze over. But basically, what he says is that consciousness is fundamental. So what if consciousness didn't emerge from our brains? It's not our brains that are conscious. It's consciousness comes first. So imagine before anything physical existed, if you can. Before space, before stars, before even time itself, there was just consciousness, like a huge, intelligent, dynamic system of awareness full of potential. But if consciousness exists alone, then what is there to do? Without interaction or contrast, it's just wasted potential. So think about being alone in an empty room with nothing to explore, no challenges, no overcome, no feedback, and no way to know if you're learning, growing, or even if you're stagnating. Pretty boring, right? Actually, it sounds pretty good to me right now. That I'll take it for a day. So then, this consciousness has an idea. It divides itself into smaller units, individual points of awareness. So think of these as like little sparks of consciousness. And yeah, eventually that means us. We'll get there. But we've still got a problem, right? Because without any stakes, without risk, nothing truly matters when you get down to it. It's like talking into the void, right? There's no feedback, there's no impact. It's like when you start an account on Twitter or X, whatever. You're just shouting into the void and no one's there. So there's no impact and there's nothing to learn from. So then consciousness goes one step further. It starts to create environments with clear rules and constraints and feedback. So almost like, I guess you'd think of it as an immersive game, like a computer game or a virtual world. Suddenly, decisions matter because choices have real outcomes. So when you make a decision in the environment, you get immediate feedback. If you choose kindness, you strengthen your relationships. Or if you act out of fear, things start falling apart. So choices now shape your experience, and you learn from the consequences of them. And out of the countless iterations of these environments, it keeps dividing up into these different environments to try out. It's an experimental thing. You eventually get a world just like ours. So it's physical bodies, brains, space, time, relationships, conflict, and connection, and taxes. Why not? So it's our universe, our planet, your life, my life. Everything around us is essentially like a learning lab. A giant environment for consciousness to explore and evolve within. So you and I are not just passive players, like we're active participants inside the system, experiencing reality from the inside out. So your growth, your struggles, and your choices, they actually do matter in the grand scheme of things to the whole system. So when you overcome fear and choose love, for example, or connection or cooperation, the whole system evolves and grows with that. So in Tom Campbell's terms, love and fear are not just emotions, right? They're kind of operating modes for your consciousness. So love is when you move toward connection and cooperation and care, and it's when you bring order and creativity to the system. Fear is when you retreat into kind of self-protection, control, and separation. So one of them lowers entropy, brings more order, more growth. That's love. And the other raises entropy. Now, Danny talked about entropy the other week, and entropy is essentially the idea that a system will just descend into chaos if you don't put some work into it. So fear's kind of got a neglect element to it as well. So a low entropy consciousness, if you're following, is one that's operating out of love and benefiting the whole system. So in this picture, God isn't a distant judge or figure in the sky. Which version of God just fell off the board? God is love. Well, I think I'll go home and think about that now. Amazing. Right. So, God's the whole conscious system. Wait a minute. Yeah, in this picture, God isn't a distant judge or figure in the sky, right? God's the whole conscious system of which you are vital, an integral part. You're not separate from God. You are consciousness exploring itself, learning about itself, and evolving itself from within. So how do we do the exploring? Well, it's through one essential tool which has a rabbit hole of its own. It's called free will. We're not going to delve into that, but we've talked about it in the past. It's a complex subject. But we'll define free will as your capacity to make choices that aren't forced or predetermined. Even that's a bit of a dodgy definition, but we'll have to go with it for now for the sake of this model. So every choice shapes who you become, and in turn, it influences how the whole system unfolds. This means that your life isn't just random or accidental. You're not just here to endure existence or pass a test. You're here because you literally you are literally how the system grows. Your life, your choices, your experience, they're all central to the process. And I guess, in a nutshell, that's the theory, at least, and maybe that's God. A God who isn't separate from you, but actually includes you. I think that was that was the conclusion I got to from that. And it wasn't too bad, actually. That version yesterday, it was about 28 minutes long when I timed it, so I've managed to whittle it down a little bit without going into the confusing details. But I appreciate, like, even there's quite a lot of points to hit on, so I think we'll take some time now to discuss some of that. I have got a slide that summarizes some of the points that I've gone over there. So if you want to maybe think about some of the things that you were mentioning earlier and perhaps how some of them might apply in this context, then go for it. But yeah, let's put the music on nice and loud, Phil, so there's no awkward silence. But yeah, take some time to just have a think about it and, talk on your tables for another 10 or 15 minutes or so. Thank you. If I could just do a quick conclusion, you can carry on your talks because, there's loads to go at, isn't there? But I just wanted to circle back quickly to the stuff that I mentioned at the very start. So I mentioned things like dreams and visions and words from God and moments that used to kind of feel normal in the Christian faith, but not so normal once you deconstruct that and leave it behind and have a different framework. So what I've shared today doesn't necessarily dismiss those things. In fact, it probably offers a framework that could make them more understandable in a way, which is part of my journey of trying to understand the stuff that happened in the past. So in this theory, for example, I said like dreams. Dreams could be seen as another environment that consciousness uses to learn and grow. So it's a different reality that's been constructed by this larger system that while your body's asleep, it's kind of working through things. So yeah, maybe your consciousness keeps evolving while your body sleeps, much like how the larger system creates environments for us to grow through experience. It's just a different kind of experience with a different weird rule set. Like you can fly and stuff in dreams, can't you? And so what about those other kind of strange moments, those kind of gut feelings, glimpses of the future, weird synchronicities, like God is love falling off the board when I said God is talking about God being love. This model says that we're all part of a bigger information system. And sometimes we can access more of it than we realize. Like, consciousness isn't bound by time in the same way that the body is. So what looks like prophecy might just be you tuning into likely outcomes that the system's already calculating, if you can track that. Because ultimately, like this book sort of mentions that we live in a reality that's based on probability. So each event that happens is a mishmash of probability, depending on the consciousness is involved with it. Whew. So, where are we? Prophecy. So we didn't get into the quantum mechanics, and you're welcome. But even physics is starting to explore this. The idea that consciousness might actually be the foundation of reality. It's been taken more and more seriously, but it's a tough thing to prove because it is quite subjective. And like this Tom Campbell guy goes on about this idea that there's objective truth and there's also subjective truth, and that's a much harder thing to test for, which obviously he would say that because he's trying to prove something. So maybe the point actually isn't to prove anything, but to stay curious, pay attention, take your choices seriously, because if this theory is even close to being right, then like the smallest act of love can matter. Like, you don't always have to change the world. You just have to make one small choice that brings clarity or connection or kindness into it, and that's how we grow, and that's how the system grows. And that concludes the talk. Thank you. Yeah, so do keep talking. We've got another half an hour or so. I've got some questions that some of them are a bit more introspective, so if you want to just think about them on your own, or you can discuss them on the table, or you can completely discard them because you might be having a more interesting conversation around it. Anyway, and if you have any questions, I can try to answer them, but my brain's a bit of a muddle of all the stuff that's in here. But try me, you might get something. So yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for indulging, and we'll see you not next week, but the week after. Thank you.